So we are on top of page test. This is where we are going to begin today. We are still on to the principle, trying to clearly identify the principle that we say that there is a nefesh is koilil koiches. Nefesh incorporates koiches. These koiches are not part of the nefesh itself. It's not like nefesh noisy koiches. Nefesh koilil koiches. And as we explained, that this principle, nefesh koilil koiches, does not mean that the koiches are just contained therein, but actually it is nefesh that gives inspiration, that gives chayas to these koiches. Without nefesh, there would be no living koiches. And yet, it's called nefesh koilil koiches.
Did you say they're not part of? Was that one of the statements?
Right, they're not. They distinguish between nefesh koilil koiches and nefesh noisei koiches. Nefesh noisei koiches, this is nefesh itself. Nefesh be'eches, the nefesh represents all kinds of different things, everything. Koilil koiches means that it also can relate to functional individual koiches that are individually identifiable. To the point where the koyach is actually mugbal. It is limited, it is circumscribed, it has a specific presence. And in exposing this principle, we are in effect contrasting sechel to ratzon. Well, ratzon, we're saying, does not have an inherent limit. In sechel, every sechel has an inherent limit. Like we said many times, that everything a human being does has a certain human quality behind it. When he walks, when he eats, everything there's a certain human quality to it. So that human quality is expressed, is identifiable in all of his activities. And you can identify, you say, eating is in such and such a way. Speaking in such and such a way, walking in such and such a way. But the underlying concept that this is a human mode, a human manner, this is all encompassing. This does not have subdivision. It's exactly the same principle that supports a certain every activity that we say this is the way the human beings are supposed to do it. And this principle, the ratzon aspect, is what gives support to the sechel aspect. The sechel takes from the ratzon, that which pertains to this particular situation, this particular sechel. But the ratzon, this is only this is present in every situation. In activity, you can say, I want to do it this way, and not this way. This is the right way to do it. In ratzon, you can say, I want to be human. There is no moment where one wants to be human. Because that kind of statement means that there is another mode that he is contrasting it to. But in ratzon there is no such mode. In sechel there is. Thus, we said that sechel, by definition, has a limited expanse. How far this reaches. Since eating is something that we all understand, let's discuss eating. A human being does not eat from the floor. He eats not even on a table, he eats from a plate. And then he eats with utensils. And then he sits by the table. Each one of these are aspects of sechel that identifies the human element in eating. It could be with and without. Then there is a further expanse in that. Like it says that one should not take a slice of bread and bite into it and put it down on the table. This is clearly a step further than eating directly from a loaf of bread, which is also possible. But even if you slice off a piece of bread, we said many times, a loaf of bread is not really presenting to a human being for eating. It just happens to be there, a loaf of bread. If it's a slice, that's already closer to the human being. But the halacha goes a step further. It says even a slice, you should break it off bite size.
Break it off bite size. It's not bite off.
It's not bite from it and put it down. If you still hold it in your hand, there's a whole question about it. But if you put it down, that's already not respectful. All of these different categories of decency, of refinement, are all supported by the human element that you want to be a human being. But how much your sechel recognizes of it, that depends already. Some people say, I always remember this man in France riding a bicycle and having one of those baguettes. Baguettes is the long French breads. And he's riding a bicycle and he's eating straight from the baguette. I was a child. I couldn't. Couldn't relate to it. Look at this. He didn't feel anything odd about it. Only about get about a foot away from his mouth. This is the sechel element. For sure, this same man would not would not bite into the bread without holding it. In other words, there's a human element there too, but it didn't go down to the sechel element. Now this sechel, this is what we need to understand. This sechel also emanates from the nefesh. This is not a circumstantial thing.
What is that last?
Wait a second. Okay, you're all set now?
Actually, I like it better over there. You want to sit here?
Heb je zegel, heb je rots?
Neither.
Okay, I just want to bring this to the point which the Rebbe is exposing. These different ways of levels of identifying the proper human manner of eating. This is not a reactive state. In other words, you bend down on the floor and you eat, hey, it doesn't look right. No, there is a sechel to begin with that understands what is the proper way of doing things. Which means, as the Rebbe says, that the nefesh is mitzamtzin itself. Which means the nefesh is mitzamtzin, this effect, the message of this ratzon, to the point where sechel can understand it also. And when sechel understands this principle of the ratzon, it initially identifies what is the proper way of doing things. This is the pshat nefesh koilel koiches. Ratzon we can understand. What is koiches come in? Nefesh koilel koiches. Nefesh has the principle that not only should you be sensitive and understand what the human being is, but you should understand in terms of how he should act, because activity is part of the nefesh order. Not only being, not only the essential union as it understands things to itself. Action is part of the nefesh order, because the nefesh has koiches pnimiyim, koiches that are identifiable on a very specific, low-level action. The hand has a koich from the nefesh. The foot has a koich from the nefesh. The brain has a koich from the nefesh. This is very easy to miss and to lose sight of, because, like in this example I just said, if a person is sensitive to the human quality, to his ratzon, then he would not. He can easily jump across sechel and says, "You're offending your human quality." What we are saying, not you're offending them. You're not acting up to sechel. The background of the sechel is a human quality. But there's a sechel also, which means that this human quality has been misamted to the point where it can be understood.
But I'm just not, what's the sable behind it? Because it seems like, I feel like we've had this conversation before when we talk about, for instance, like eating like a mensch. At the end of the day, there's almost no logical reason for a person not to eat like an animal. And the only reason why we can say to eat like a human being is because you are a human being. Like obviously.
No. The seichel, what you were saying, we said it on the other side, there's not a compelling element. That's what you said, there is no, I can say at the end of the day, there's nothing compelling you to eat that way. But there is something that directs you to eat that way. It certainly makes sense.
But I mean, given the example you gave, a guy was riding on the bike, eating a baguette, chewing out of it. Obviously, what's the problem with it? I mean, I can understand that it doesn't look right. It strikes you wrong. You look at it, but obviously, what's the problem?
Okay, we said the other day that when the Rebbe asked the guy, "Why did you eat?"
Mm-hmm.
He said, "I ate so that I could live." And we all understood. Just at the university, recognized that this is already a madrega. This is the intellectual madrega. How did the guy come to this? In my opinion, because he lived in the proximity of the Rebbe. The Rebbe's chassid for so many years, so he got this sense. And if you eat so that you would live, so you're serving your nefesh at the time. If you eat, so your sechel says, so you eat so that you would live, eat like a mensch, in respect to your life. So we said that this fast food serving, like eating from baguette, he's not eating so that he would live, he's eating so he won't be hungry. It's a different kind of eating. But seichel says, yes, eat so that you would live, it makes sense. It's a seichel thing. It's a madreg, it's seichel. It's a human seichel. Not animals don't have that idea. Animals do not eat so they would live. They eat so they won't be hungry.
I hear what you're saying, but honestly, I'm just not seeing. I understand the idea of the guy in the Maisa, that the fact that he said that I eat so I can live means he came to some type of intellectual comprehension. That wasn't an expression of ratzon. That was an expression of understanding. Mm-hmm. I don't see where we can say that a person that eats a baguette while he's riding a bike is doing so. I can see how he's doing so out of a lack of understanding. What does it mean to be a mensch? But that sounds awfully close to saying just do it because you're a human being, which sounds similar to ratzon, and not. I don't see the seichel there. So a person sits down and he puts a big bowl of soup in front of him and scoops it out of the bowl and eats it.
1 second. We have distinguished almost clearly the difference between eating so that you're not hungry. You eat because there's a compelling element to eat. Or I'm eating because there is a illogical, there is a reasonable. Mm-hmm. Okay. In the way you act it, you do it, it's obvious. It manifests itself. If there was no seichel element in the way you perform it, clearly you're not recognizing the seichel value of the activity. You're eating because you were forced to eat. You're hungry. They doesn't go through the process of seichel.
So you're saying if a person doesn't eat in a way which is befitting a human being, it's evidence of the fact that he doesn't intellectually connect to the reason why he's eating.
That's right. I'm saying the reason we sit down to eat, not that, don't go back to the ratzon. You go partially because you're doing a respectable thing. You have to respect the efforts that we're trying to support, the life. Yes, it's hot.
Rabbi, at what point do you draw the line between convention? For instance, in Japan, and it used to be that everybody would sit on the floor and the table would be very low.
There's no problem with that. Right, there's different ways. That's not there are no rules about that. That's in Allah speaks about in Japan the Obnei Yishmael. The Yishmaelim sit on the floor, on the carpets,
Right.
and the Adimim sit on the chairs.
Right.
There is not a negative element. Whatever is conventionally identified as respectful, that is what you do. For instance, even when it comes to davening, you're supposed to be clothed. You're supposed to be covered. To what extent? To the extent that conventionally this is called covered. In a place where people walk without socks, you're allowed to daven without socks. In a place where people cover their feet, you're not allowed to daven without uncovered feet. Mm-hmm. This is what we're saying. In seichel comes from exposes a nefesh element, not something that's compelling. Eating because you're hungry is a compelling element. That's yesha. And there is not a seichel element.
Rather, people who eat pizza without a fork and a knife, or other countries who have these, like, they just eat with their hands, that's like...
I'll tell you, we'll have to go to an FDK class. Yeah.
Can we
I think we understand the principle. I know we decided that this is an English class, a science class, but it really isn't. We're trying to understand what an man.
But real quick, can we just all say our favorite foods?
He does with a straight face.
We're saying it's the kavanah, right?
You're good.
All right, this is
serious ideas.
The other seichel has a limit there, it says. This is the limit.
It's just the seichel, that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about, we're talking about the kavanah a person's having when they're eating, and they're doing it in a controlled manner. That's what we're saying, right?
Right. Actually, this is right there in the Rambam. The Rambam says, HaChochem Niker in his Chochmah is Niker in every one of his activities. How he walks, how he talks, how he eats. All goes into that category. What he is saying, this is very important, that behind this is not just a convention. Behind that there is a nefesh, there's a soul, a ruch nisikiyina, that that expresses itself through the faculty, quote unquote, of ratzon. Without this nefesh, you could not have that sensitivity on any level. Like you said, the foot walks Because the foot walks, doesn't move like a robot. Why? Because there's a nefesh in it. The life makes sense for it to walk. When you see a person moving his feet and walking, we are used to seeing it, but in concept, it does not. It's not perplexing. How can the foot? It's a living human being. And we explained what is the principle. It's a lie. It's a living thing. The principle it's a living thing means that Gashmi is limited to the place where it is. A living thing is not limited. As far as the entire environment that it can be aware of, that's where it is. Mogen shelitzenu shel Odom, shomhu. And we said many times, this is a very important, very exposing concept, that when the cat walks on a straight line, it's walking on a straight line. It's aware of this line, nothing else. Human being is never in that position. He's aware of the reality where the straight line is present. His sechel, his awareness, is a living sechel fed by the ratzon, by the nefesh, by the living in reality.
So even though we start off this starting kumei seichel, seems like seichel just being brought this one example, but really, according to what we're saying, seichel is between every koyach that it's not convention, that it's done with a nefesh quality. It necessitates the seichel that there should be the recognition, al pi seichel, that he's doing this because he's a human being, not because he's eating because he wants to live, not because he's hungry. He's moving in a certain way because he wants to reflect the correct posture of a mensch and not to move like an animal. Seichel is the intermediary for all of it. It's not just an example over here. This is the foundation that all the keiches should be imbued with this kul benefesh quality.
Yeah, that is correct. Seichel is the intermediary between the ratzon, the nefesh, and all the other koyches. That's where the nefesh is first mislavish in the brain. All right. Okay, top of page test.
But actually, just to repeat something you said in the beginning, that the Rebbe Rashab is bringing the comparison between the ratzon and the sechel, that we will understand something else in the mind, something previously brought in the mind. It's to contrast. This contrast between ratzon and sechel is to explain to us, to clarify for us something previous in the mind. Could you just say that again?
Well, the Rebbe says that there is in the nefesh that level that's called nefesh koilel koiches. By translation, koilel koiches means the nefesh possesses koiches, which kind of distinguish between nefesh and koiches. And the simplest way to further define this is there's a pouch in the nefesh where koiches were put. This is not true, but it's not a total lie. Because nefesh is in its highest levels relates to koiches. What is koiches? Koiches is a pneumistic action, a definitive action. These koiches, to manifest themselves, the nefesh has to be mitzamtzim itself. to come to a point where the koiches are functional. You understand it?
Yeah. So
Because
it's
yeah.
it's a further, rather it's just a parallel comparison. It's a further elaboration of what it is. These two levels of the nefesh, of noise and koile, the ratzon and the sechel. As koile becomes, as the nefesh comes to a koile state, a koile of the koiches, it's using ratzon and sechel to express these definitive koiches that are included in the nefesh of the koil state. I'm trying to understand if the explanation of ratzon and seichel is an explanation of what it means that the nefesh was mitzamtzim into a state of nefesh koilo koiches, or if it's just that it's giving us an insight into the what it means that the nefesh was mitzamtzim into the state of from nefesh bearing the koiches to the nefesh, including the koiches.
You're not with something, what you're saying enough for me to understand it.
Okay, let's pass on it. Let's go on.
Okay, listen. I want to be sure to understand, so as much effort it will take. We gave a very, very clear exposition of the principle of tzimtzum. You build a house. Where do you build a house? Someplace on earth. And by building a house, you are demarcating a certain area on earth. That becomes a house. This area that you're demarcating does not change from its original state when it was part of the earth. And it's still part of the earth. By demarcation, which means you're mitzamtzim this universal reality, and thereby exposing it to specific functions. Now it makes sense to put a table in there. Before you put the walls around, you can't put a table there. You don't put a table down and then build walls around it. You build walls and then put a table down. Why? Doesn't make any sense. Because without walls there's no exposition to that concept of a table. It's the same space exactly. And it was there before. But you have not exposed that aspect. And by putting these walls on medication, you did expose it. Let's think of the following. You'll see how Torah looks at these things. Make a sukkah. How do you make a sukkah? Put up 4 walls, right? Not necessarily. You demarcate 4 walls. That's enough. It's an amazing thing. You see how profound this thing is?
Do you mean that if you say you put up 2 walls or 3 walls, then then the concept of the 3rd wall is
There is halachas. You put up a wall, you put up a corner, and a facing corner, and you have a sukkah. The Baal Shem Tov, the Baal Shem Tov built a sukkah with all the halachic principles. There were no walls, there was nothing there.
No walls at all?
Halachically, halachic
He had the
walls.
corner?
Well, yeah, the corner, he had a little beam on top.
Uh-huh.
Halachic corners. Now Shem Tov had a reason he wanted to live in that conceptual sukkah.
Right.
And that conceptual sukkah is a sukkah. To the point when you sit in the sukkah, because halacha, listen to this, halacha is that the schach is above 20 amas, it's possible. Perfectly kosher schach. If it's above 20 amas, it's possible. Why? Because above 20 amas, you're not aware that you're eating on the schach. Schach is beyond your vision, and therefore you're not aware. You have to feel that you're in a sukkah. Here you have open walls, and you're actually being in a sukkah. Which means that, yes, it does provide that awareness, that sensitivity, that sense. And you put up these corner walls, and you bring a table on it, and you say, it's not out of place. Yeah, it makes sense. Why? Because you mitzamtzim the open space to identify this particular thing. There's no other thing. You don't have to change anything. You have to be mitzamtzim, you have to focus it. The nefesh is mitzamtzim itself. As it shines and it illuminates the body, so that the bodily functions of the various koiches surface. Makes sense? You mentioned many times, walking is not a nefesh thing. Nefesh doesn't know a limit. Nefesh is where, he is where he wants to be. Doesn't have to get there. He is wherever he wants to be. The concept of getting there through walking is a tzimtzum in the nefesh. The nefesh is mitzamtzim. Mitzamtzim this principle, the mokim shel shalom shomahu, is mitzamtzim this principle, so that it can be related to at the body level. How does it finally express itself in the body level? That I can walk from here to there, and it's not odd. What are you doing over there? You're supposed to be here. If I did not have a nefesh, then I couldn't get there. Couldn't even think of that. I would think only of the place where I am. Now that I do have a nefesh, and nefesh is mitzamtzim, and tells me, you could be everywhere. I can actually pick up and walk there. What enables me to pick up and walk there? The nefesh, but on a very mitzumtzum level. What mitzumtzum level is? That you can move, you can go there, you don't have to be, the nefesh does not have to go there, but it's something to the level with the goof, and the goof may have an activity to walk there. This is the principle of koiches pnimiyim. The nefesh is pnimiyim. It relates to an aver on the pnimizik level. Enables the goof to act on the level of nefesh. Think about this. This is a phenomenal thing. If a table starts walking all of a sudden from here to there, say, where are you going? As a matter of fact, if a table slips, and you find sometimes they have earth slides. Oh, wow, this is ridiculous. This is tragic. Because it does not have a sense of moving from place to place. A human being can move any place you want. You can go from here to Honolulu, to China, to Australia. It makes sense. All right. All right. One who is a very wise person, who understands the principle of this Inyan to a greater depth, then he would be able to spread forth and to identify this sechel in a broader expanse. You can find the same sechel in many different situations. Yet still, even then, hakel hu behagbola, throughout, as far as it reaches, it is all behagbola. It is all circumscribed, and there's a limit. Behainu, and that is, why does it continue to be behagbola? Because that this is the sechel is an oir pnimi beyatzem. It is an internal type of oir, not makifi, but a pnimi. The fact that there is this place, this is a makif. The fact that you can get to this place, that's pnimi. Which means that this place is not something that you just sight, but you, with your mitzias, can get there. Because that the seichel is oipnimi be'etzem. Al-kein bo b'hagbola. This is why it comes out and it expresses itself in seichel at whatever level. Is behagbola has a certain an element of gvul. When we say then, who, the place where the person wants to be, there he is, we do not mean to say that he is there when the place where he is already identified. It means that there is not a limit where he is. He's an entire reality. And factually, because the ratzon, he is everywhere. Sechel can also project very great distances, but he has to identify the distance. And if he cannot identify the distance, he cannot relate to it. We said the other day, these are all things that are so clear. We said the other day, invite a person and give a person as a personal dwelling, private dwelling, the Empire State Building. But the condition has to be you don't sublet any rooms. This is your personal dwelling. Can he feel comfortable there?
You're crazy.
Can you feel comfortable there? What's missing? It's a beautiful, a huge, well-structured building. He cannot project. He cannot see the end of this house. He can't live in it.
And this is a nimshal
For anything that sechel can relate to has to be Hagbala. What is Hagbala? Hagbala is that he can actually identify the end of it. Knowing that there is a wall at the end of a half a mile, does that give him any comfort? Okay. Grishim said that sechel comes by Hagbala. Please understand what the point that the Rebbe is working so hard. These are koiches that are kol in the nefesh. This is not nefesh. It's just kol in the nefesh. And in order that nefesh should give rise, to give life to this koiches, it has to be misamtzem. Then these koiches can come to life.
I'm just curious as that we're speaking about it, and I don't want to get too far off track. It reminds me. I know we've spoken before about the idea that, and it seems to be kind of the contrary to this, is that when you put a person in prison, it doesn't matter how big the area is that you fence him in. If he knows that he's not free to go, it's crippling to his he just can't live like that. But here, according to what we're saying now, the area could be big enough that al pi seichel he could not relate to it. Like the walls could be half a mile away, and yet it's still. I don't know. I feel like I took the time to come up with a question, but then I wanted to listen to what you were saying.
I know, but think about it. What's the answer?
I'm guessing the word essence is somewhere in there.
You're imprisoning him. You're imprisoning his thoughts. Not the same.
But according to what we're saying now, doesn't he have to be able to relate to it?
Did you listen to what I said?
Yeah.
Before you ask a question, give yourself 10 seconds. What's the answer to your question? Mokim shelitzayna shalodem shomhu. You took away that quality.
But that's my question. Then why doesn't it work the opposite way? When you give him the Empire State Building, you're you're satiating that quality. You're saying
no.
You have all the space
that quality is satiated, but to live practically has to be on the seichel level, not on the ratzon level.
So then, how come practically on the seichel level of the prison he's fine because he can't see the walls?
That's right, absolutely. On the seichel level he's fine, but he doesn't have a ratzon. He can't live it himself.
He can't what himself?
Live with himself.
Either way, he's
Live
going to be
with it.
dissatisfied, whether it's seichel or ratzon.
You're right. It's two completely different levels. On contrary, I said, so to speak, in developed in respectable countries, a prison, especially white collar crime, they play tennis, they play chess. Some people graduate college from prison, but he chose to be in prison in order to be able to graduate college? No way. Because you're taking away this greater, this real aspect of the human being. This was the terrible crime that the communists did. The communists identified the human being, fill his belly. Exactly that. That's what he said. Fill his belly and he'll be happy. There's no chayas. There's an empty belly. There is pain, hunger pain. Fill his belly. That's what the human being is. So they imprisoned the entire 500 million people. And they say this is freedom. You could not move from city to city within the same country without a permit. Can you imagine that? A citizen, a born citizen.
So really, they're not opposites, but there's just a progression. Like to exemplify the necessity of not infringing on a person's ratzon, we use prison to say if his ratzon is limited, that's it. There's nothing to talk about. And even further, you go to a domicile. He can have his ratzon, but if the sechel isn't satiated, if it's not the agbal in the sechel, he's also.
But it's two different things completely.
Oh, so it's not a progression.
Come on, yeah. Totally different things. When you talk about on the practical thing, you're sitting by a table and eating. You need to have a sense of a private area. Sechel and ratzon are on a totally different level. Ratzon is the background, but it's totally different area.
Sechel is bounded. Sechel is bounded and works with definitions, and that's appropriate. But it's based upon the surrounding infinity.
That's right, reality. Like I said, if you walk on a plank, and you do not have the sense that there is the whole reality supporting this plank, you'll be very uncomfortable. Even though all you need is this plank.
And if you limited yourself to the definitions of sechel, then you'll create your own imprisonment. You'll become you're an ideologue or a communist.
This is exactly right. This is what we have it. This was tried in the world all over the place. The Germans have identified a German should come to an appointment a second late. He's out of his mind. He can't find himself. There is a joke that is made that a man lives home and says to his wife, "Tonight I'm going to be a trifle later. I'll be a trifle later because tonight we start saying within Talomota."
Right. So that right. That kind of over.
Instead of saying bracha.
Yeah.
Saying Talomota bracha. Two additional words and another letter.
So the German side there, the obsession with time, or the communist obsession with the permits, that's the result of removing the sky, removing the infinity from the human life.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. והיינו ליוסוי או הפנימי בעצם על כן בו בהגבול. The sechel is בעצם an oipnimi, which means you actually relate to experience it. Therefore, it has to be Hagbola. You can be a great Chacham, you can be a much broader Hagbola, but Hagbola, a definitive place. I said many times you see pictures, whatever it is, the king is sitting and he's got his entourage and he's got his he acts in court. Could be a huge room. He's sitting like 100 feet away from anybody else. A king can relate to that. An average person could not do that. I can talk to you across the room. Yeah, come and talk. Okay? But even by a king, it has to be Bahagbola. The Gam, let's go to the next step a little bit. The Gam, Bo Bebchinas is Chalkus. Then also Seichel or all Koiches can be Bebchinas is Chalkus in the category of his Chalkus of subdivisions. This is another significant and profound distinction. of koiches and etzem and ratzon. Shaharei, since that, behold, kol inyan sichli, yesh boy kama protein. It contains many protein, many specific qualities. It can be subdivided and subdivided and subdivided in little specifics. She'i efsher, which means that it's not possible that there should be a inyan sichli, shelo boy protein, in which there should not be protein. It should not be able to be subdivided. V'chol prat sheboi. Okay, let's first relate to this principle. Ayin sichli must have protein, must be able to be subdivided into its components, so to speak. If you, for instance, if you have the responsibility, you want to explain something, and it is just a concept, how are you going to explain that concept? You break this concept down into little tracks, and that way you present it, and the student who has ratzon, who has a living student, he'll be able to construct this from these tracks the sechel. As a matter of fact, this is how we explain a sechel, by breaking it down to little components. The sechel is not built from components. The sechel is built from the concept that he draws from the nefesh, from the ratzon. But it is being recognized on the sechel level. Being recognized on the sechel level, then inevitably there are components. Let's understand, based on the most cholim that we already have, and that'll be it for today. We said that to have a home out of the Empire State Building is not practical. You can't relate to it. And we said, and the reason is, what's missing there? He doesn't feel that he is encompassed, that he is in a demarcated area. He is in demarcated, practically speaking, but he doesn't sense it and doesn't feel that being in demarcation. So we said that he does not readily see the end of the room. If he looks at it, of course he sees the end of the room, but does not readily see it. What is it? What is the difference when it is if it's a limited room and he actually he feels the demarcation or does not feel demarcation? There's a halacha of hunting. If you have a deer in a fenced-in area, so practically speaking, the deer is locked in this fenced area. because Shabbos you're not allowed to hunt. You're not allowed to fence in an animal. That's called zdiya. So if the animal is brought into a fenced-in area, it's already fenced in, captured. The thing is that if you can get to this animal with one stretch, with one attempt, then it's total. If you cannot get to it in one attempt, he'll avoid you. He'll whittle out, and you have to follow it and try to trap it and so forth. Then you're even if it is already in a fenced area. When a person is sitting and eating in the dining room, and he's definitely fenced in. If in order to get point A to point B, it is beyond the few steps that a person normally takes, he is not in the room. It's outside of his current location.
As a Shabbos din.
So he's not over on Stia. If it's a large area, he's not over, or he is over.
What, in Sdia?
Yeah.
If it's a large area, so that the deer will avoid you, then you're over. If you catch it, if you're going to catch it, you're over on Sdia.
And if it's a small area,
if it's a smaller area, it's already tzodut.
Oh.
You mean when you first brought it in there? I'm talking. It's already in this enclosed area. If you cannot catch it when the first shield, when the first bend, you're able to do it because it's still in the free. It's still not under your control, under the control of the walls.
How does that relate to the table? I'm sorry. How does that relate to it?
So I'm saying, you have in your living room, you surmise the distance between where you are to any place in the room immediately. Whereas if it was a hole, this is far, Yeah, how many steps do I need to do it? It's a completely different. It's not within the normal range of activity. That's why you feel uncomfortable. You don't have the comfort of your own location of a home.
This is all a muscle for deep crisis meaning.
Right.
This is still talking about the Chacham who, the deeper he understands something, the more he can relate to, or this is the next thing you're talking about his Chalkus?
This is the Hischalkus element. But it's related. The Hischalkus, now what, how many feet between you and him and that wall? How many steps does it take to go from here to there? If it's any sechel, there is this protein. What constitutes this distance? There is the sighting of it, and then there is the getting there. This is it for this morning.
After the Rebbe Rashab brings the Chacham Gadol, as he has his mugdal, what is taught to us with the next level, like sub-levels?
What? Hischalkus?
Yes. What is being explained to us with that?
That in addition to the fact that there is an overall limit, that concept itself can be subdivided into many details. For example, You're not allowed to steal. And if you steal, you have to pay. And there is consequences, there is a law, whatever it is. You're not allowed to steal. But if you steal, that's an asur pruta. So you stole less than asur pruta, but you don't owe it to the, but you have to pay for it. Interesting thing.
Yeah.